Alright, so this is your video key for the reflections homework that you received today. Let's go ahead and get started. So on the top right here, what we have is the notes that you took today. And I'm going to skip over that top part because you should already have those notes. And if you haven't already yet done so, you should put those 3 rules that I gave you in your notes on 3 separate note cards, okay? And the rules I'm referring to is what happens to your x and y coordinate when you reflect a picture over the x-axis, what happens to your x and y coordinate when you reflect a picture over the y-axis, and last but not least, what happens to your x and y coordinates when you reflect a picture over the y equals x axis. Again, we highlighted those 3 rules. They were in your notes today, okay? And if you don't know the 3 rules that I'm talking about, they are on the back side of your notes. So make sure that you have placed these 3 rules on 3 separate note cards and that you memorize them, okay? Now, I'm going to go quickly through the ones that you should already know how to do, and those are the more simple, basic ones. What I want you to do is, as you're looking at my examples, don't focus so much on how I label the coordinates. We're all going to choose to label the coordinates with different variables, whether it be A, B, C, L, M, K. Whatever you decide to label the vertex of each picture is totally up to you. What I want you to make sure, though, as you're watching this video, is I want you to make sure that your picture looks like mine and that your coordinates match up with mine as far as whether or not they are correct, okay? We're not looking so much at the letters that you chose to name each of your vertexes, all right? So for the first one, number 1, what you had to do was you had to reflect this image over the x-axis. Now, first thing was to label your y-axis and your x-axis. I did that. Then I labeled each point on my figure. I went A, B, C there. Okay. Then I reflected the shape across the x-axis. Now, the rule from your notes is when you reflect something over the x-axis, the x stay the same, but the y's become their opposite. All right. So after labeling each one of the vertexes, or the vertices, I'm sorry, I placed A was 1, 4, this one over here was 5, 3, and this point over here was 1, 2. Alright? Now, if the x's stay the same, all I had to do was copy this row of x's again, or this column of x's again, and then all the y's here had to become the opposite. So 4 became -4, 3 became -3, and 2 became -2. Alright? Once I found out what the new coordinates were, I graphed it, and this was my picture. Again, our x-axis was our mirror line, and each point over here should be an equal distance from the line of reflection as over here. So since C is 2 down, C up here should be 2 up. Since B is 3 up, B prime down here should be 3 down. All right, and so on. So that was the answer for number 1. Okay. Number 2. You were asked again to reflect the image over the x-axis. So first thing was label the x and y axis, which I did right there. Make sure you do that. Next was to label each point as A, B, C, which I did here. Again, the order that you choose to label it doesn't matter. Just make sure that your picture looks like mine. Now, using the original points, all right, since I'm going over the x-axis, the x's are going to stay the same. So -4 stays -4. -2 stays -2, and -2 stays -2. The y's become their opposite, so 3 became -3, 4 became -4, and since 0 is a unique number, there is no opposite to it, so it just stayed 0. Once I figure out the new coordinates, I graph my picture, and this is how your picture should look for this problem. Alright? Next one, label the x and y axis. Here's my x-axis, here's my y-axis, so I did it. Label each point in the figure. So since this is a quadrilateral, we have points A, B, C, D, and I decided to name them in this order. Once I named them, I found the coordinate for each one of them. And this one's different from the other ones because we're reflecting it over the y-axis, which is why I highlighted the y-axis in this one. Now, the rule for reflecting over the y-axis is, if you reflect over the y-axis, the x's become their opposites, but the y's stay the same. Okay, so every x became its opposite, and every y stayed exactly the same. Okay. Once I got my new coordinates, I graphed my picture, and your picture should look similar to this. Alright, next one is something that we didn't practice in class. This is the one I'm going to walk through step by step with you. So, step 1, label the x-axis and y-axis. I did that. So go ahead, label your x-axis, and label your y-axis. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Alright, next step, label each point on the figure. So it's a triangle, so we have 3 points. So since I have points A, B, C, I'm just going to place them anywhere on my figure. Okay. Now, after you label each vertex, you need to get the points or the coordinates for each vertex. So A is at 0, -1. B is at 4, +1. And C is at 4, -1. Okay? Now, just to be clear, this is your y-axis and this is your x-axis. Okay? Right there. The line that we're using to reflect this picture over is not your x or your y-axis. It's actually this horizontal line down here. So I'm going to go and highlight my line of reflection as we always should. Okay, so here's my line of reflection. It is neither the x or the y-axis. Okay, so since it's neither of those, what I want you to do is I wanted you to give me the equation for this line. Now, this line is a horizontal line, and it crosses the y-axis. So, since it crosses the y-axis, I'm going to put y equals, and specifically it crosses the y-axis at -2. Okay, so that is our line of reflection. That's the equation I was asking you for on letter C. So here's your answer for letter C. Give the equation for the line of reflection. Now, once you give me the equation for the line of reflection, I wanted you to reflect this image, triangle ABC, over that line. Now remember, it's pretty simple to reflect an image. Just make sure that each reflected point is the equal distance away from the line of reflection as the original point. Okay, so if this is my line of reflection, I notice that A is 1 up, so A prime has to be 1 down. Over here, my line of reflection is here. I notice that B is 1, 2, 3 up, so B prime has to be 3 down. 1, 2, 3. There's B prime. Line of reflection, I notice that C is 1 up, so C prime has to be 1 down. Again, each point and its reflected point has to be an equal distance away from the line of reflection. In this case, again, our line of reflection was y equals -2. Now, once I figure out where the points should be, I need to list them on the image column of my table to the right. Alright, so A moved to -0, -3, and that was A prime. B prime and C prime. B prime moved to +4, -5, and C prime moved to +4, -3. Okay? Again, that's how your picture should look. Alright, next question. We have our x-axis right here. Okay, this is our x-axis. This is our y-axis. And here is our line of reflection. Alright, so before we can go with a line of reflection and reflecting it, I need us to complete step A, which I did. Make sure you two have labeled your X and Y axis. Next, I need to label each point on the figure. So it's a quadrilateral. It's quadrilateral A, B, C, D. So I'm just going to go A, B, C, D. Okay. Once I label each point, I'm going to write down what their coordinates are. A is at 0, 1. B is at 2, 1. C is at 0, -2. And D is at 2, -2. Alright? Now, I need to give letter C says to give an equation for the line of reflection. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the line of reflection. Now, notice this time we have a vertical line of reflection. We have a vertical line of reflection. Here was our y-axis, here was our x-axis, and here is our line of reflection. Now, what is the equation for that line of reflection? Well, what I notice about this line is that when the line goes, it crosses the x-axis, okay? So our equation is going to begin with x equals. Now, what is x equals? X equals whichever point this line crosses through or intersects the x-axis. And specifically, I notice that it intersects the x-axis at -2. So that's the equation I wanted for C. So the equation for this line is x equals -2. Now, once I get my line of reflection, the equation for it, I need to reflect the image over that line. I see that from the line of reflection, A is 2 points to the right, so that means A prime is going to be 2 points to the left. I notice that B is 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to the right, so that means that B prime is going to be 4 to the left, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Going down here, I notice that C is 1, 2 away to the right, so it's going to be C prime is going to be 2 to the left. I notice that D is 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, so D prime is going to be 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, your line of reflection acts as the symmetry point, or the midway or halfway mark between both of your figures. So once I plot the points, I need to connect the dots to complete my quadrilateral. Alright, and your figure should look like that. Okay, now we have to get the quadrant, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime. Alright, A prime is at 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, +1. B prime is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -6, +1. C prime is at 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, -2. And D prime is at -6, -2. Okay? So that should be your answer and the way your picture should look for that problem. Alright, next one. They want you to reflect this image over the y equals x line. So you'll notice for this one, I didn't give you the table. It is your job now to create your own table on all tests and quizzes. So we have our pre-image and we have our image. Alright? So our pre-image has H, L, P, and Q. Okay. H is at 1, 2, -2, 1, 2, 3, +3. L is at 0, 2, P is at 1, 2, 3, negative 3, negative 2, and Q is at 1, 2, negative 2, positive 1. Okay? So those are the coordinates for my pre-image. Now they're asking me to reflect this picture across the y equals x axis. Now if you go from your notes, if you look at your notes from today, the rule for reflecting something over the y equals x line is to take your original coordinates, x comma y, and simply switch the positions of your coordinates. So your y is going to become your x, and your x is going to become your y. Alright? So, keeping that in mind, I'm just going to switch the positions of these coordinates, the order. Okay? So for h prime, it's going to become 3, negative 2. L prime is going to become 2, 0. P prime is going to become negative 2, negative 3. And Q prime is going to become 1, comma, negative 2. Again, I just switched the order of the two coordinates. Now, once I get the coordinates for my image, I'm going to go ahead and graph it. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, that's my h prime. 1, 2, 0, that's going to be my L prime. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, that's going to be my P prime. And then 1, negative 2, 1, 2, that's going to be my Q prime. Okay? So once I get my coordinates down, I'm going to connect the dots. Alright, and there you go. That is a reflection over the y equals x line. Alright, next one. They want us to reflect it over the y equals negative 1 line. So what we're going to do is, this line, the line that we draw, this reflection line, has to cross the y-axis at negative 2, which is right here. I'm sorry, negative 1. Okay? So the line we draw has to intersect the y-axis because this tells us so. Has to intersect the y-axis at negative 1. So since our line has to cross at that point, okay, it's going to be a horizontal line. So I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to draw my horizontal line. Again, this is my line of reflection, which is y equals negative 1. Okay, so that's y equals negative 1. Alright, so I'm going to highlight it so I know where my line of reflection is. Okay, and I'm going to give you a moment to catch up. Alright, now remember, the line of reflection acts as the line of symmetry for the picture. And anything you see on top, you have to draw on bottom. Anything you see on the bottom, you have to draw on top. So with that being said, this is actually going to be a pretty unique picture because the picture is actually going to be reflected on top of itself. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the top points. Okay, and I'm going to graph the points that are on top of the line of symmetry. So on top of the line of symmetry, I see I is 1, 2, 3 above it. So I'm going to go 3 below it to get I prime. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's I prime. W, here's my line of reflection. W is 1, 2, 3, 4 above it. So W prime needs to be 4 below it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is W prime. Okay, I graphed all the points that are on top. Now I'm going to look at the points that are on bottom. Now B is 1, 2 below it, so I need to graph B 1, 2 above it. So that's B prime. L is 1 below it, so I need to go 1 above it to find L prime. So again, everything on the bottom, I graphed on top. Everything on top, I graphed on the bottom. Now once I do that, I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to draw my new picture. Alright, and that is our reflection over the y equals -1 line. Now remember, if you ever want to test this out to see if it's actually a reflection, remember, if you fold your paper on that reflection line, I should meet I prime, W should meet W prime, B should meet B prime, and L should meet L prime. Okay? Remember, that is your line of symmetry. Alright? Last two. For the last two problems, what I wanted you to do was simply name the line of reflection. Okay? Now, if you keep in mind that the line of reflection is the middle line or the middle point between the two images, then you should be able to find it. Alright? So let's look at this one right here. I noticed that, I'm just going to start with R, and you can focus on one point at a time. I noticed R, there's two spaces in between R. If I divide 2 by 2, I get 1, so that'd be the middle point there between R and R prime and R. With W and W prime, I noticed that it goes 2 above here and 2 below there, so that's the middle point. And since these 2 points are on the same line, I'm going to take a guess, and I'm pretty sure it's an accurate guess, but the line of reflection here is actually going to be our x-axis. Okay? So the line of reflection on number 9 is the x-axis. Okay? Last one, number 10. I'm going to start with P prime and P, and I'm going to find the middle point between them. So total distance, they're 2 spaces away from each other, so 2 divided by 2 would be 1. So here's the middle point. With K, total spaces in between it is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so that's the middle point here. And I'm going to do that with R and R prime as well. It's 2 spaces away, and the middle of 2 would be 1. Alright? So once I find the midpoint in between both of those, I'm going to draw their perpendicular bisector, which is going to be our line of reflection. Okay? And now I need to find an equation for that line. Alright? So I see it's a vertical line, and it's a vertical line that intersects the x-axis. Now since it intersects the x-axis, we're going to begin with x equals. Now the exact point where it crosses the x-axis is what we're going to put as our number right here. So the point where it crosses the x-axis is 1, 2, 3, -3. So the line of reflection is x is equal to -3. Okay? If you still don't understand this, please call, text, or email me. Feel free to text me a picture of your work. If I get no responses, then I assume that you understood this video, and if so, I will see you in class tomorrow. Thanks for watching.